Now to a top story on our social media pages today. A setback for Governor Ron DeSantis in his attempt to classify a Muslim civil rights group as a terrorist organization. Yesterday, Tallahassee-based federal district judge Mark Walker approved a preliminary injunction against DeSantis' executive order. That order labeled the Council on American Islamic Relations, or CAIR, as a terrorist group and blocked them from receiving government resources. Judge Walker ruled that the order effectively limits CAIR's free speech. He also described DeSantis as a bully and says, quote, "The First Amendment bars the governor from continuing the troubling trend of using an executive office to make a political statement at the expense of others' constitutional rights," end quote. CAIR praised the judge's ruling. Meanwhile, DeSantis' communications director said this on X, quote, "Judicial ethics bars a federal district judge from continuing the troubling trend of using his judicial office to make a political statement at the expense of a party before him," end quote. This is not the first time that Judge Walker has ruled against the DeSantis administration in high-profile cases. In 2024, he overturned part of the law known as the Stop Woke Act. Last June, he granted a preliminary injunction on the law banning social media use for young teens. He also partially blocked the law that restricts citizen-led ballot amendments. Walker was nominated by President Obama and has been a federal judge since 2012.